Welcome to Far East Wargaming, bringing you another Heresy Thursday. My name is Richard, and once again, for the start of 2024, it's a pleasure to have Jason on the channel.
Yes, Happy New Year to all of you. I hope you had a great, fantastic holiday, and it is a pleasure to be here.
Yes, so we did take a bit of a hiatus for the festive season. We had a very busy, well, for us, for the channel, and very fruitful 2023. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody who has liked, subscribed, and continues to follow us moving forward. So we thought we'd take a bit of time just to spend some time with our families, unwind a bit, but we have been working on things behind the scenes because Legions Imperialis did come out.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we've been working on. I think the combination of my business travel, people getting sick, and the holidays was just a bit of downtime. But you're absolutely right. We've got Legions Imperialis coming. We have our forces finally here in Malaysia. We're working diligently on those. We're excited to bring the combined arms campaign of the different systems in 2024. We're even working on other things. We've got full-sized armies coming for the Thousand Sons and for others to bring more variety onto the channel. So yes, it's been quite a busy time, even though content-wise probably hasn't been as much as we'd like to put out.
And for today's Heresy Thursday, we thought we'd look back on a few of the things that were announced over the Christmas period, and there were quite a few.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of things that have been announced in the last couple of weeks. We've got pre-orders. We've got the Legion Imperialis new Malkador tank variant coming out, the new campaign book that's coming out. In full-size 30K, we've got the amazing new apothecaries, and I don't mind saying amazing because, let's face it, we'll talk about it in a minute. They're nice. And then we've got our little sneaky preview that GW gave us for stuff that's coming in 2024. Although the cynic in us would say it was a part of their roadmap for 2023, but it is what it is.
Yes. Well, everything has been quite delayed for Games Workshop, as can be seen from the significant delay they've had in Legions Imperialis. But let's start today by, well, let's look at the full-scale stuff, because it is the stuff we want to talk about. And that is these two beautiful apothecaries that they released.
Yes, and it's not very often that you and I agree that models are beautiful in the new releases, especially when one of them is a Mark 6. But they honestly, man, they smashed these. I'm sorry. There's nothing negative I have to say about it. And that's not me being a fanboy. I'll get into my observations in just a minute. But there's no massive, strange tactical rocks. There's no gaudiness on these other than what you would expect an apothecary to have. There's no strange posing. It's the first Mark V official model that we've seen for 2.0 in terms of a full model. And he's a bit of a chunky boy. He's got some thickness to him in those legs. He's obviously been upsized a bit. Man, I can't say enough good things about these models. They are absolutely beautiful.
I think you're right. We are in agreement here. They have knocked this one out of the park. And as we saw in some of the characters that they announced in our last Heresy Thursday, they're really following the trend here. I'm really pleased with the way Games Workshop is doing this. The one thing I will say, because there's never no criticism, I do wish these weren't in resin. But we're used to that for the apothecaries in Horus Heresy, because they've always been a resin purchase or just a resin build themselves. And seeing the Mark V, seeing the Mark 6, even side by side, I think they look great. It's fantastic to see the studs of the Mark V, and maybe if they've now got the digital files for this Mark V armor, there is a slimmer of hope that they may release a plastic version of a tactical squad in it. One can only dream there. But the thing that really got me the most, and this is really a small point, but it's a bit of my OCD-ness, is that there's no snappy, fragile things hanging off this model as there was in the past one.
This is very true. If I look at the Mark 6, right, yes, it's in resin. I totally agree with you there. Probably the other very minor beef that I would have is please give us weapon options if they're in the units. Like if you're going to be strict GW about only giving us, you know, certain combinations, apothecaries in the rulebook can take everything from power swords to combi weapons. Would it kill you to stick a couple of those in the blister? I think that's a very minor quibble. But looking at the Mark 6, I mean, this is just a really nice model. And honestly, this has a lot of conversion potential. And you always hear me talk about this because I'm a hobbyist, right? Shave off that apothecary symbol on the left greave, shave off that minor one on the robe, use different arms, different head, different backpack. And this gives you a nice basis for a lot of conversions with a nice little robed body. I like that a lot. The chainsword. So this is a variant of the chainsword I think we saw in the jet bike kit, where it's got that little extra bit of material towards the tip that kind of gives it a little bit of a more aggressive look. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but if you compare the assault squad, the jet bikes, these models, they keep going back and forth on the design of the chainswords, which I think is actually pretty cool. That's a little bit different. That head, if you want to use a bear head on this model and save that nice Mark 6 head for converting over, I don't know, your Pathfinder, if for some reason you want to do one of those, or a Vigilator, or an Iron Hands character, man, I mean, there's just a lot of potential with that model, even besides being an apothecary. And, you know, I'll kind of stop there because that's just on the Mark 6. I got a ton more to say even about the Mark 5.
Yeah, the Mark 6, I've never been a big fan of the Mark 6 armor here, but everything they've done with this guy is great. I also do like the change in the Narcisium they've got. It's no longer a big needle, or it doesn't look like it's just a fragile needle. It looks like they've got more of the chain sword or the chainsaw aspect to it, which again makes it easier to move around and just not break whilst you're playing with these models. And I do get your point about the weapons loadouts. The thankful thing I'll say is this looks like they followed the old design method where it's separate arms, separate shoulder pads, and it's not half a body or a quarter of a body that Games Workshop has started to do, especially in their plastics, to honestly I think it's just to limit the potential convertibility from availability of 3D printers there.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and it's a fair hypothesis. I think part of it is just also that I've noticed that they can get much more dynamic posing when they don't give you as much freedom with the movement. Let me give you an example. I'm converting up our Thousand Suns channel army right now, and I'm using a lot of the 40K rubric bodies. I'm using certain different things, and sometimes I actually like the fact of the new limited posability options on the Mark 6 and the Mark 3 that they've released. Because sometimes on these Rubiks, I mean, using the bodies with combinations of arms and backpacks, etc., just it's extra steps, right? So I get what you're saying, but there's also a positive to it, which is when they put more dynamic poses, they limit the mobility of the certain joins and things like this. It allows them to do a different model, but I definitely hear what you're saying. For me, I mean, going to the Mark 5, you know, yes, we have our first Mark 5. I think it looks ace. They've nailed the armor design. They haven't changed it so much from 1.0 or from the old Forgeworld designs to this new 2.0 version. It's easily recognizable as Mark 5. It's just a bit thicker in the legs. The helmet is slightly changed, but still recognizable as Mark 5. What's interesting to me is that backpack. That's definitely a new design. It's not the Mark 6 backpack. It's not the Mark 3 backpack. It is its own thing. And in 1.0, Mark 6 and Mark 5 actually shared the same backpack. So here we have a distinction with the design. And we even have a distinction in terms of the instruments that are on top of that backpack. Really love this Mark 5. It doesn't have the convertibility potential in my mind that the Mark 6 model does, just because of the way the various apothecary equipment are right front and center on his waist. But that head, begging for a swap to something else. That backpack, yeah, I mean, man, I love this model. And coming back to what you said earlier, if this is kind of a teaser for any designs they may have on a plastic version of Mark 5, please, GW, take my money now. This looks great. And unlike the Mark 6 and the Mark 3s, I don't have such a negative reaction to this design change. I think they nailed it.
Yeah, GW, you can start a GoFundMe for these molds. I think it'll be easily filled with the Horus Heresy people, because we do really want to see Mark 5s. I think it's a global consensus for the Horus Heresy community that missing out the Mark 5 was a big talking point for us. And you're right about that new backpack. I didn't notice it actually. It's going to be interesting. I think this will also be a very nice model to put with the new jump packs from the Mark 6, especially because of the way the Mark 5 torso already has those straps, or a version of the straps that you see on the new Mark 6 Assault Marines. So I honestly, I do like it.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, great point about the Assault Marine. Sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just going to say, yeah, you really had a good point there about how compatible that would be and the look. And hey, who doesn't want apothecaries with their assault squads anyhow? So there you go.
Yeah, the assault squads, they are kind of fragile. Having a 5+ feel no pain especially helps bring that to, well, a bit of longevity, especially running if you're running in the larger squads. That extra bit of points really does pay for itself. I'm a big fan of using apothecaries in our forces, and I think I'll continue to do so there. But honestly, I think we can go on for a long time being fanboys of these two new models here, but we've kind of touched all of the relevant points, unless you had something to add, Jason.
No, not at all. Again, I mean, great job, GW. Credit where credit is due. But please, if anybody from GW is listening, give us the weapon options. Give us more power weapons beside the plastic swords, please.
Yeah. Well, they might coming up with a sprue. I think that was something that they were talking about in their roadmap at some point there. But we'll have to see weapon upgrades. It would be nice for us to have. But also, what they've announced for the Horus Heresy in the full scale is that sneak preview of these black and white shadows.
Yes, and coming back to my earlier comment, if everybody recalls, in April of 2023 with the released roadmap, there was supposed to be a new army by the end of the year. Well, it's pretty much confirmation here that it was Solar Aux. Not a big deal, not a big secret, but kind of annoying. There's also a teaser about what appears to be the new plastic command squad in Mark III. And if you search around on the internet, you've already found some heroes of the cause that have taken these videos and they've changed the resolution and they've been able to pick out some more of the details. This is big news. Honestly, it's big news. I mean, I think we all knew that it was going to be Solar Aux, or we had a very strong feeling it was going to be Solar Aux. This is by far amazing news, right? Because probably the biggest barrier to anybody playing Solar Aux is the combination of fragile resin plus cost. Well, now you've got it in plastic. Unless they're teasing us resin models, and I don't think they would be teasing us resin models, because even looking at these resin models, some of the details on them would be way too thin to be resin. Yeah, this is great news, and I'm so excited for these models to come out. And it's not just the fact that they're in plastic, but it's also hinting at what appears to be a new unit. Am I right, Rich?
Yeah, there's no current, as far as I'm aware, there's no current walker for the Solar Aux. So this is a hint at something with a rather, it looks like a lasgun on it, but maybe an early version of a Sentinel. They did release a walker for Imperialis, but this doesn't look like it's the same thing there. It looks like somebody's riding on the back of this. For me, talking about the confirmation of it being Solar Aux, it really was between two different legions. It was going to be either Mechanicum or Solar Aux there. That was the thing that was coming out. And I'm honestly glad it's Solar Aux, because it's a force that you just don't see played because of the, like Jason was saying, the prohibitive nature of fielding and just acquiring one of these forces here. And I also think it matches with their timeline where in Imperialis they've released Space Marines versus Solar Aux. So we're kind of already in the mindset that new players might want to, who want to get in Horus Heresy but just don't want to be bog standard Marines, are going to have a very valid, affordable option.
Yeah, absolutely. And this now brings the number of non-Marine armies that are available to players to 4, right? I mean, you got Mechanicum, you've got Solar Aux, you've got Imperial Cults and Militia, and you've got Demons. So plenty of variety there for those that don't want to play Power Armor, which is perfectly fine. Coming back to the whole Solar Aux and plastic thing, like I've had many opportunities to acquire Solar Aux armies, either to buy like unpainted, unassembled ones, or to buy painted forces. And the thing that's always scared me about it, even though we would love to have it on the channel, it's the resin, right? forget Vexilia's making the travel halfway around the world to Asia, some of their weapons, some of the details. There was just no way that I could think of that I could get a Solorox army halfway around the world at a reasonable cost, as well as making the journey safely. So the fact that these are in plastic to me is just a godsend. It really is. Much more durable, much more accessible. I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is the price points, right? Now, there is a little bit of good news, because if you look at assault squads, the price point for 10 models versus the 40K equivalent of 5 Primaris assault dudes, that's got a lot of people kind of, making noise on the internet, right? Because we're getting a much better value for 10 assault dudes for 30K, and let's face it, the size of the plastic and everything else is roughly the same, okay? So I'm curious how they're going to price this Solar Ox, because, I mean, an infantry tercio, 30 dudes, right? I mean, if you're going to still be pricing those in plastic at 150, 160 US, I mean, that's going to be a pain in the butt. But I mean, it remains to be seen if they're going to give any sort of volume discount for this kind of army. You see that type of pricing model in 40K with things like orcs. They need big units. They have to buy lots of models. With Imperial Guard, a bit not as good as before. But again, I mean, those armies that are very model heavy, GW seems to take that into account with a bit of the pricing, and hopefully they'll do that with the Solar Ox as well.
Yeah, GW is renowned for pricing their models as the game requires, as opposed to the amount of plastic that's weighed inside one of these things. So if they're much more expensive than a 20-man tactical squad, which is the box size we're getting there, I think it will cause some ruffled feathers. But I think GW does, or should, acknowledge that it is a horde army here because of their low costs in the game and the number you have to field. That, a bit like the demons, you just need to have a lot of bodies on the board. So if it's 2 times the price of getting a Space Marine army, it's not going to be a viable entry level option for somebody looking to get into what is one of their mainstream games now, the Horus Heresy, and not choose the core 18 legions of Space Marine boys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think probably the other thing that kind of excites me about this little Chicken Walker or Scout Walker model, as well as the Heavy Walker, I can't remember what the name of it. Do you remember what the name is for Legions Imperialis of the Heavy Walker?
I think it's called Alion. God, I'm going to butcher these names. Give me a second to pull it up, because I do have in front of me, because we have been looking quite closely at all the Imperialis stuff, and we're in the middle of getting our forces there. Atheon Heavy Sentinel Patrol. That's what it's called.
Yeah, so the little Chicken Walker being released in plastic through this teaser, and then Imperialis with the Atheon Heavy Walker. Wouldn't surprise me if we see that in plastic for full-scale 30K as well. So that's really, really exciting. New stuff. I mean, who doesn't love new stuff? Yes, I know the negative Nancy's out there always grumble when somebody says, yeah, new stuff is cool. In this particular case, new stuff is cool, right? It's Solar Ox. It's new units for the Solar Ox. This is cool. But probably the other new thing that's been teased in this preview is the confirmation of what the Marca armor on the command squad looks like. So this is in Mark III. Again, if you look at the high-res, Photoshop opportunities that have been done online, you can see very clearly this is Mark III armor. The guy is carrying a helmet in a hand. He's got Imperial fist markings, of course. He's got a nice banner in his right hand. Now, whether these accessories and this kit is coming out as specific to a certain mark of armor, I doubt. But they've built this with a Mark III. Now, whether that's a unique model in the box or it's one of the ones from the actual Mark IIIs themselves, it's a little hard to tell from the angle of the photo, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, again, I mean, this is very, very needed stuff, right? Because in 2.0, let's face it, command squads are amazing. Whether they're in power armor or whether they're in Terminator armor, everybody that I know here and everybody when we've gone and we've played events, command squads rule. And they're so flexible and everything else. So the fact that they're finally getting love and giving us these options, much cheaper than trying to find them on Forgeworld, much less work than trying to convert over your own, although I enjoy doing that. Yeah, this is nice. I like this. And hopefully this comes out sooner rather than later.
Yep, it was announced in their roadmap that a command squad would be coming out in the winter period. So this is previewed now. Whether it gets released before spring is a different matter, but we'll see there. I do like, I love command squads there. I think we field them for most of our armies right now, and it's just very good value for money in the game, and it's nice to see that we'll have something to actually play without having to do I'll say a significant amount of conversion, because just having the standard bearers is hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I, again, credit where credit is due. The command squad can take things like combat shields, well, when they're on foot, right? And you've now got those in plastic through the assault squad boxes, and not everybody is running them on their assault squad, so they're relatively easy to trade for. Yeah, command squads are so good. I think the only other question I would have when that sprue comes out, when that box comes out, how many of the power weapon options are going to be available on it? Are we going to get mauls? Are we going to get lances? Are we going to get axes? Are we going to get enough lightning claws? Because lightning claws, very popular choice on power armor command squads and veteran squads for that matter. Are we going to get enough of the weapon options with this box? That remains to be seen, right? If GW is smart, they've answered some of our problems in terms of missing equipment, missing war gear. Please, let's hope for the best on the command squad box when it comes out. But yeah, I'm excited by that one.
I think honestly, the command squad, getting that out because we need the weapon sprues, there's a good synergy there for them to actually release some weapon sprues themselves and include one of them, or like at least one of the close combat sprues inside this box, and then release a upgrade box like they have with some of the other upgrade sprues for weapons and the tactical marines. It's a missed opportunity if they don't, I think, and it's also gonna be a very less desirable box if they don't as well, because I don't know anybody who runs command squads as bare bones. Everybody puts weapons on their command squads, whether they be the combi upgrades or power fist or swords. Just in general, you tend to bling out your command squads, and then not having the plastic option but having a plastic body and having to find either conversion or 3D parts or resin parts from other kits. It's going to make it problematic for beginners, and I think the one thing that GW is focusing on more and more is getting this game and the Horus Heresy to be more beginner friendly. We are moving away from these more complicated, or the standard more complicated resin sprues. Now, there are exceptions, and I think one of them was the Demon Fulgrim, the Demon Primarch Fulgrim, who I wouldn't even touch as a veteran and someone who uses resin all the time. I wouldn't touch that model with a yardstick. But don't miss the opportunity to really fulfill another need in our hobby.
Yeah, just real quickly while we're on the subject, if you have the jet bike box and you have the assault squad box and you now have this command squad box, you actually have a lot of flexibility and versatility in terms of a lot of the units that you can put together, as well as the weapon options, right? Because in the jet bike squad, you get access to Volkite pistols, you get access to straight arms that can be used on despoilers or characters or command squads or veterans. If you've got the assault squad box, you now have a plethora of combat shields. You do get one set of matching lightning claws, although two would have been great. And then, of course, with this command squad, depending on the weapon options, we may finally, I say, maybe there might be a light at the end of the tunnel that we don't have to beg, borrow, and steal for all of this between the different sets that are now going to be available in plastic. So, again, credit where credit is due for doing this, and let's see what happens. But we do have, I think, some other previews that we've kind of missed that we're catching up on in the last couple of weeks, and that switches back to a different scale.
Yep, we are. Well, GW really is in the full swing with Legion Imperialis now that they have launched it. So they launched their starter box, which had its own problems there, but they've also now, and this is a very quick release, or at least a very quick announcement, they're releasing another book with supplementary rules and supplementary missions. I think it's called The Great Slaughter.
Yeah, so for the fluff nuts out there, this is the Garmin sector, which was the Battle of Beta Garmin with the Titan death, when masses and masses and masses of Titans for both the traitors and the loyalists fought each other and killed each other in massive fashion. This rulebook, I guess, is intended to encompass that campaign. It gives us a lot of new rules, according to the article on Warcom. We see new rules for the. If you look at White Dwarf, right, there's been some battle reports for Legions Imperialis, and they've shown things like drop pods, like jet bike squads, like speeders,
Spartans,
drop pods, etc. Yeah, blah. They've showed all this, right? So this book is going to have the rules for that. And then this book is going to have the rules for new formations, whether it's the drop pod formations. The Solar Aux get some new formations on mechanized super heavies. There's new campaign rules. There's even new rules for fighting games with nothing but Titans and Knights, which I think is kind of a bone to throw to the Adeptus Titanicus crowd. Because, I mean, we haven't played much of Legions Imperialis, but reading through the book, Titans and Knights seem to have gotten nerfed massively. Maybe this book is going to have some new rules or some changes that are going to make these Titan on Titan battles a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, it's good to get the new content. It's good to get finally the rules for these new units. Hopefully at the same time they're releasing this book, are they releasing the box sets for these units? That's the question, right? I mean, it'd be kind of dumb not to. But yes, this will allow more variety in your forces other than just what we got with the starter box for both Solar Aux as well as Legion players.
Yeah, the initial release of Legion Imperialis, though nice, honestly required you to buy multiple boxes of the Imperialis to get a viable force, plus some of the upgrades, those being Rhinos and Kratoses and such. And the way the rules are written, Titans are really not required but nice to have, because they're limited again, as very much like the full scale. They're 30% of your army can be in the Titan formations. So you can't really have Titans taking the field and being the center of attention. Also, they don't have line, and all of the Legion Imperialis missions are objective based. So again, infantry focused. Maybe having this new or modified rule set where it's going to be a Titan on Titan battle, maybe a bit closer to the way Adeptus Titanicus is played, should be nice to see, depending on how the rules do pan out. There have already been some grumblings about some of the inefficiencies in the rules for Legions Imperialis. We're not going to go into that until we've really had our chance to sink our teeth into the gameplay and evaluate it for ourselves. But it also is maybe giving a very, very slight glimmer of hope. If they're doing something specifically for Titans, they may do something specifically for Flyers. And maybe the Aeronautica players might get a ray of sunshine in the dark times after we have basically had their entire game system canned.
Yeah, great point. I mean, again, nothing is stopping, as we do ourselves, right? Nothing's stopping people from going back and playing AI or playing AT as they were, other than the fact the support is dropping off. But yeah, you're right. Maybe we may get future rules for air on air only. That would make total sense if we're getting the Titan on Titan battle rules. To me, this is also in many ways a good sign that there's a lot of releases coming for Legions Imperialis. And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of doom and gloom on the internet. Let's be honest, right? We all know that. There's a lot of channels on YouTube that are saying, oh, well, Legions Imperialis was dead on arrival. Okay, well, I mean, I get that take, and I don't necessarily argue with people about that, right? But you wouldn't preview a book like this with all these different sets that are going to be dropping as a result if the game was quote-unquote dead on arrival, right? You know, in my mind, if we look at this and the units in this book, there's also the preview for the different Malkador variants that we had a couple weeks ago as well. That to me signifies a healthy release schedule. Now, whether the schedule is on time or not is a different story. That signifies to me a healthy release schedule through 2024, not a game system that is just a one time and done, pump some money and run, right? Now, at the end of the day, money is king, and sales are going to drive this thing. And if it doesn't sell very well, then they're going to eventually phase it out. That's the way the world works, right? But again, I mean, we wouldn't be having these kinds of previews and these kinds of units coming up if if there wasn't at least a little bit of legs under there, right? So again, it's going to be up to us as gamers whether or not we're going to make this thing live or die, right? I plan on, playing it. We plan on obviously having a lot of games on the channel. We're going to do a linked campaign. We're really excited about this. But yeah, I mean, again, I'm drowning and going on and going in a lot of different directions. But yet at the same time, the main point is the book releases, I think, is a good thing. It's a good sign. I'm interested to get my hands on it, and I'm interested to see what that means for Legions Imperialis.
Yeah, I'm very positive on Legions Imperialis as well. The one thing I think I will say that to counterpoint that is that, especially on the channel, I wouldn't expect the low point games that you get from basically the starter box, or maybe even two of the starter boxes combined, being super exciting games to play, just because of what we have is a very limited selection right now. What I'm looking forward to is when we're actually fielding armies, like full formations, maybe of multiple legions on the same side there, which is definitely possible here. And having, instead of 2,000 point games, we're having 10,000 point games per side there, which is very doable in this scale across 6x4 fields. That's where it's really shining in my eyes, and I think it will just take a bit of time for people to build up these forces. Even though they are very small, there's a surprising amount of detail on these things, as we've had to paint ours ourselves, but also access to what you need. The way the sprues were designed isn't fantastic, but it's not a hurdle that's impossible to overcome. So for me, for Imperialis, if we're talking about that, what I'm looking forward to is going to be in the future the massive games you can play, where you're fielding huge numbers of bases. Basically a horde version of a large-scale 30k game, just where each base is a 5-man squad instead of a single Marine.
Yes, and we've seen some people that are actually using the Imperialis models and doing these little mini 30k games. And what I mean by that is they're using Imperialis models to play full-size 30k. They're creating travel boards, they're doing all this kind of stuff. So to me, that's really cool. So just throwing that kind of out there. Tinfoil hat time. And the tinfoil hat time is, and I protect my sources, okay? I've seen boxes for some of the units that are coming out. I physically have seen some of these boxes, right? So it's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when, right? And I agree with you. I mean, the starter box, although it's nice, you need 2 of them really to build a decent sized force, trade with your friend. It is very limiting in terms of the types of formations and units and things that you can run. It's good for what it is, but yes, we're hungry for the other stuff. So I totally agree with you there. Again, the good news is that it's coming, right? It's coming. Previewed here and with some of the boxes that I've seen as well. Just kind of coming back to, because we just very briefly talked about it, we did miss on Heresy Thursday a couple weeks ago due to our downtime. Speaking of new units, the Malcadors, right, for the Solar Ox. These are really cool that the Solar Ox is going to be able to take these in Legions Imperialis, because the Forgeworld full-size models were excellent, and they were, at one point in time in 1.0, these things were a nightmare if you were a Legion player, Marine player. So you get the Infernus, which is the version with the towable flame tank. It's kind of a throwback to a World War II Churchill Crocodile tank. And then you get the Infernus, or excuse me, not the Infernus. You get the Tank Hunter, which is the Valder Tank Hunter version, which comes with the equivalent of like a Sakaran Venator cannon. So yeah, more options for the Solar Ox, more anti-tank options in terms of the Venator, and more anti-infantry options in terms of the Infernus. I think Solar Ox are going to be, I think they're going to be a force to reckon with in Legions Imperialis, to be quite honest with you. They've got a lot of tools and stuff that can do a lot of different things. Yeah, interesting. So I'm glad to see these models make the transition to the game as well.
No, the models do look great, and there is a astonishing amount of detail on something of this size, which is great to see, and will be great to see. Well, it's great to see the heavy metal versions. From personal experience, it's very hard to paint to get all that detail out in this level. But again, with the new contrast paints, with some very delicate dry brushing, you can get a very good effort effect, just showing effort there to get something on the board relatively quickly. And I think you're right for Solar Auxilia. They might actually potentially be stronger if played correctly than a lot of the Space Marine forces, because some of those rules are really lacking for some of the legions. And it comes down really to the way the rules are written as opposed to the models available. But again, like I said, I don't really want to delve in too much to the pros and cons of the rule set right now until we've had our chance at Far East Wargaming to get a few games under our belt to get a real sense of what is going on with this game system.
Yes, yeah, that'll be definitely a topic for a different time once we've kind of played some games. I'm going to be painting my own Legion as the Death Guard, of course, because, hey, why not? I wanted it at every single scale, and now my collection is complete. Legions Imperialis, 30K, 40K, I have it at every scale. But you're right. Yeah, some of the Legion rules are meh. Some of them are like, ooh, that's pretty good. Let's talk, I think, real quickly, because we've caught up everything from our downtime over the last 3 weeks or so. Let's talk a little bit about our plans for the channel, right? So I'll start the conversation. We've hinted at it in previous Heresy Thursdays. The Battlefleet Gothic bat rep that we did and posted on YouTube was really well received. Obviously, you guys like the regular bat reps that we're doing, whether it's 30K in 30 minutes or the full size. There seems to be a lot of support for both variants. What I'm pleased to let you know is we are, once we get the Legions Imperialis forces fully painted, along with the terrain and the board, we're going to start running a linked campaign. And you're going to see games of Battlefleet, Imperialis, and regular 30K all connected in 2024 and having an effect. So, for example, the first stage could be Battlefleet Gothic up in the skies, or up, excuse me, in the void above the planetary systems. What happens as a result of that outcome brings us down into an Imperialis game representing the landings and the mass combat that's going on. What happens in that happens to transition into regular 30K, smaller. So rules effects kind of affecting everything, a story kind of going behind everything. I wanted to start that bit of conversation because it is definitely coming, and also get your thoughts, Richard, on, you know, are you liking what we're going to be doing with this? Do you have any other thoughts on it? Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm on the same page there. We've been very excited here at Far East Wargaming to get started on a link campaign. We started planning this in the first quarter of 2023 when they announced Legions Imperialis, because we saw the synergies, and we were actually looking at getting some Aeronautica involved as well. But now with, well, we might still, depending on the availability, but everything is currently sold out for Aeronautica everywhere I try and find it for this. But I like the idea of the link campaigns for the Horus Heresy. We're going to try and follow, initially, at least the Istvan 3 campaign and keep it narrative along those lines. But if the channel likes it, and if everybody is supportive, we can break this out into different scenarios, or just specifically every now and then doing some Battlefleet Gothic or one of the other specialist games. We will be also doing some versions of old specialist games brought to the Horus Heresy. We have plans for a few of those, and they will be special events really for the channel there, where we're just having a bit of fun bringing things like Space Hulk to 30K and such. Because the scale is slightly different, we are having to make some modifications. But yes, a lot of exciting things for the channel. We're continuing to grow. We're looking to grow our community here as well, and also connect more with the global community at large.
Yes, yeah. So exciting things to come. Thanks you everybody for the patience as well, and again for the downtime over the last couple of weeks as we've been enjoying the end of the year and doing the various activities. Stay tuned as well. Next bat rep is going to be coming relatively soon. We're going to be doing some more filming on the upcoming weekend. Exciting things are coming for the channel. We got merchandise coming. We got a lot of different things in the works. stick with us. I think you won't regret it. And again, we thank everybody that's been with us to this point in terms of subscribing, liking, commenting. It's also helpful. It's also motivating. We're finally actually monetizing, but we're monetizing basically at a trickle, which is only contributing towards adding more content, right? We had no plans to get rich off of this thing. But for those of you that have been supporting us, we really appreciate it. And hopefully you like what's coming in 24 as well.
Yeah. Well, look, we've been going for a while now, trying to catch up with the beginning of 2024 and the end of 2023. Once again, I want to thank everybody who has stayed with us throughout this journey. We are going to be moving forward to bigger and better things. We're continually trying to improve. So if there was something you really did like that we did in 2023, let us know in the comments. And if there was something you think we can improve on, please let us know as well. As long as it's constructive, we're happy to get the feedback. We're trying our very best to bring the best content we can with the resources available. And slowly but surely, we are increasing those resources to just bring better and better quality videos, better and better quality podcasts. We're looking at bringing a few guests on as well online in the future. And if you are interested to do that, please also drop us a message. We'd be happy to have discussions with people about the various topics. It's always nice to get different points of view as opposed to just Jason and I's thoughts and feelings on what's happening with Games Workshop and the Horus Heresy. But yes, I think for me, that's all for this week's podcast. Jason, do you want any last comments?
Yeah, just one last comment. If you happen to be in Southeast Asia, if you're coming into this part of the world on vacation or whatever else, and you'd love to get on the channel, or you want to come get a game, or you just want to grab a beer, let us know. Message, let us know. You know, Thailand is just around the corner, so if you're traveling there or to Vietnam or here to Malaysia to Singapore, just let us know and we'll be more than happy to host you. But yeah, I think for this week, good discussion, a lot of different topics, and excited for what the future brings.
Well then, from Jason and I at Far East Wargaming, thank you very much for your time. We will see you next week for another Heresy Thursday. But for now, Happy New Year, and we'll look forward to bringing more in 2024.
See you at the next one.